And it's Ken Kreitzer for CammVetsMedia. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military and veterans proudly since 2008. And this is our week 3 Army football huddle. Army comes off an impressive 24-7 road win in the heat in paradise at Florida Atlantic University to go 2-0 on the season, gets a bye week, and then we'll play Rice at home. So let's introduce our group tonight. We've got calling in from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama. We've got Colonel Sam Houston, class of '87. Colonel, how are you?
I'm great. I survived the heat in FAU Stadium, and it was an awesome game.
Absolutely. Okay, and calling in from Florida, who's at the game, Richard Miller. How are you?
I'm very well, Ken. The weather might be hot, but what's hotter is an Army victory over FAU.
Absolutely. And let's see, we got calling in from Connecticut who wrote our game stories, John Churan. John, how are you?
I'm fine, Ken, and got to speak to some of the players today, and it was pretty interesting.
Okay. And calling in from South Jersey, we've got Steve Shalou, class of '92.
Jan, how's everybody doing today? This is a exciting time to be an Army football fan.
It certainly is. And calling in from Long Island, Chuck Donegan. Chuck, how are you?
Hey, Ken, I'm good. How about you?
Good, good. And calling in from Pelham, New York, my WVOX sidekick, Jack McGurk. How are you?
Doing great, Ken. Hell of a win for Army.
It really was. Well, it's Steve and Sam and Richard were at the game, and I have to say I had a very privileged seat upstairs. But you know it was so impressive to see how Army handled the situation, the mental toughness that they showed. Well, going out on the field, the Palm Beach newspaper said it was over 100 degrees on the field, even though it was a grass field, and bright sun and a little bit of a breeze. But they just played their hearts out, played every minute. They wore their black uniforms. It was kind of in your face. Okay, Florida Atlantic, you want to wear your white road uniforms at home? And so Army wore their all black and just took it to them from the beginning of the game till the end of the game. And that was impressive. I'll have to say the two games that reminded me of was the 2016 opening day win at Temple, when Army kind of showed that the Jeff Monken era had arrived, beating a Temple team that was coming off that big season and big crowd at the link. And Army had the game won early in the fourth quarter. The other game it reminded me of a road win was at Buffalo in 2018, when Army was coming off a loss, the close loss at Oklahoma, and you might have thought they'd have a letdown. They took it to Buffalo. They were kind of the homecoming guests. It was homecoming at Buffalo. Buffalo had a good team, and Army just took it to them and won an impressive road game. So I think this is one of the more impressive Army road game wins in the Jeff Monken era. Sam, what do you think? You were down there close to the field.
It was an amazing performance by Army, and really the score was much closer than the game actually was. For those who were there watching the game, probably were aware better than people who were watching it on TV. And that is how much more physical and how much more energetic the Army team was from start to finish than FAU was. They literally melted under the heat in the withering running attack of the Army football team. I did want to say a quick shout out, though, to James Wagonseller, our punter, who had 2 punts and averaged about 44 yards. Stephanie and I had a wonderful time with James's parents this past weekend. They were part of the CIC donor activities, and it was wonderful to be able to spend that time with them. But from a game perspective, there was the good and there was the bad. The good much outweighed the bad. The good was that Army continued to roll on offense. Clearly, they have a very good feel for the offense. I like the play calling of Cody Worley. Army is playing the perimeter game more than I have seen them play perimeter ball probably since early in the Monken era. And that speed to the outside with Noah Short and hopefully soon with Terrell Robinson coming back once he comes back and gets back in the backfield, has just been blistering teams to the outside. Outstanding blocking. The offensive line has been getting after it. The defense. One of the keys to the game, I told you, Ken, when we met at the AOG tailgate right before the game started, I said on defense, it is going to be necessary for the defense to make drastic improvement over their run stuffing as opposed to how they performed against Lehigh. And they rose to the occasion. I believe FAU got maybe 50 yards rushing total. They forced their
42.
offense to be
42.
42. Okay, well, I stand corrected. That's even better. And they forced FAU's offense when they had the ball to be one-dimensional, and they maintained very good contain on their quarterback. The longest run from scrimmage, I think, was 16 yards. And beyond that, they really were limited to practically nothing. And then there was the goal line stand, which was to me the most powerful and poignant moment of the entire game. It was an Army statement. FAU had the ball first and goal on the 2-yard line, and Army stuffed them on 4th down at the 2-yard line, and with a FAU quarterback's helmet rolling across the turf. It was just really powerful stuff. And then, of course, special teams, once again, Sean Saturnio once again rolls out the tricks play. And this one, you know what? I said last week that I saw the fake punt coming against Lehigh, and I did. I did not see this one coming, period, at all. I don't think anyone in the stadium knew that that play was coming. And let me say, hands off to Hayden Reed for a crushing block on the outside that sprung him upfield. So great teamwork all around. Now, I just say the bad, and I'm just going to say the bad quick because I want to hear from Steve. The bad, the second quarter, there was a fumble. First turnover of Army's season. And that fumble prevented Army from basically running the clock out in the second quarter and ending the second quarter with another touchdown that would have made it 21-0 at the half. It was a clean fumble. It happened. The Army team did not suffer from it. Then there were penalties that came at some bad times. And there was a defensive holding on the nose tackle that kept the ensuing FAU drive alive, which ended up leading to them scoring their one and only touchdown of the game. And then we saw another penalty that popped up more than once in the second half that we have not seen this season yet, and that was that nasty chop block. But I got to say, I'm going to end it on a high note here. Those chop block penalties are normally drive killers. They didn't kill any Army drives. The Army team overcame those penalties and continued drives and dominated the time of possession in the game, especially in the second half where it mattered. Great game in the heat. Once again, I survived. It was so hot in that stadium that even A-Man was not allowed to wear his mask. And I mean that. We talked to him, and the reason A-Man did not have his mask on was because he was told for safety reasons he couldn't wear it because it was so hot.
And you spent, I give you credit, a lot of credit. You and Steve spent time overseas in some very hot conditions as Army soldiers. But it was amazing down there that Friday was actually warmer than Saturday. But to play in that condition, you brought up Sam Matthew Rhodes' 23-yard fake field goal, taking the snap as a holder, running left, finding a hole, getting a good block, as you mentioned, and running for a touchdown that gave Army the 24-7 lead and really iced the game. Steve Shalou, you were down there. What was your impression?
My impression was you're starting to see the maturation of the Army football team, and we're watching that happen. And they're gaining a ton of confidence. And that Army team came out, and they want to have an identity and they want to have an attitude. And I love it. And it starts with the guys up front, the offensive line, and them controlling the line of scrimmage. This team reminded me a lot of the Navy 2015, the Keenan Reynolds type year, where they just had an attitude knowing that we'll tell you what we're going to run and you're not going to be able to stop us. And we're going to, we're going to drive it down your throat, and they're going to get a great deal of satisfaction doing that. When they're starting to get that attitude with that offensive line and the running backs, in terms of what they can do inside or outside, there's a lot of excitement that's going on with that, and that will become contagious. I don't think we've seen even close to the best of what this offense is going to look like coming forward. Even when we had our opportunities, and in the past, we've had opportunities, we've had wide open receivers. We hit him in stride with one of the best throws an Army quarterbacks had in decades. In stride, fingertips, pull it in, scored a touchdown. And you could see that safety running that alley, and we were baiting them into it. So we have that double, triple threat that is going to keep teams on their toes. And we're going to need that as we move through. When wearing all blacks, and I've been seeing, I saw on Facebook and other things, why are we wearing all black? Stupidest call ever. Genius. Genius. It showed our level of fitness, our level of intensity, and that we were going to throw it in their face. We could have been there in all blacks. We could have been there in snow parkers. We were going to take them behind the woodshed. And that's what was going to happen. And offensively, they did that. Defensively, as Sam talked about, I was flat out amazed how disciplined we were on lane containment and keeping them off balance in terms of cutting back and doing all the rest of the things that we had a problem with against Lehigh. No three and outs, those type of things. And then we came out and we forced them off the field quite a bit. And it really, really took their effect on it. And then, again, I've talked about this so many times. When you're an offense, an Army offense, and you have 8-minute drives, and time of possession was huge here, 38 and a half minutes to 21. You limit the number of possessions in the second half, and you could see them counting down. Like we have 3 possession lead, and there aren't enough possessions left in the ball game. And for them to give the ball back to us, which they did, they knew it was a nail in the coffin for them. So good all the way around. We're starting to get an attitude. We still have to work on our fourth quarter closeouts. That needs to come, because if we do, we can put our foot on the throat of a lot of teams. And I'm very impressed with the offensive line play and the maturation of the quarterback, hustling down yards to block for his running back. Just shows the type of player that he is. The sky's the limit. Having a week off is great. Rice had a bounce back game and looked really, really tight and played almost a perfect game. So they're going to come ready to play, and we have to come ready to play to continue on with our AAC success.
Yeah, absolutely. I just was really impressed with the team's mental toughness. If they went out, didn't let the weather bother them. They were trained from Army training to handle heat or whatever weather they encounter. As Coach Munkin loves to say, the weather doesn't stop the U.S. Army. And, as far as individual efforts, Noah Short is continuing to impress. Had 162 yards rushing, had the opening touchdown, 49 yards play on a pitch from Bryson Daly, and just played spectacular. He's added another gear to his game. It's like he accelerates faster than he did in the past. And of course, we talked about Bryson Daly. He gained 117 yards, and he only had a pass 4 times, and 1 completion, but it was for 44 yards. And Army's second touchdown in the second quarter to Casey Reynolds. And Trey Granati, good day, had a 36-yard field goal. I think he's getting more confident, or building confidence. Max Domenico got a beautiful interception off a Cam Fancher pass. When the Army had the play diagnosed, they had double coverage, and the quarterback threw right into the double coverage, and Max DiDomenico made the catch as the inside man. And that led to a drive where Matthew Rhodes took the safe field goal attempt and ran 23 yards for a touchdown.
Ken, face straight ahead, please.
Yeah, Ken, when you turn your head, we can hardly hear you.
Okay. John Duran, what were your thoughts? You wrote the game story for us.
I did, and it seems like Sam Houston could have written it for me because the fact is we keyed on the same points. My notice of the game or notification was, yes, that fourth quarter goal line stand was pretty impressive and sent a message. And also the rest of the game was very good. Noah Short is the revelation so far of the season. The fact is that if he can do this for 2 more games, there may be somebody besides Glenn Davis that they're going to refer to as Mr. Outside on the Army team. The fact is that this team is very, very good. They're executing well. As you pointed out, the coach made a distinction in both the pre-game press conference and in the post-game press conference about how these players are used to going someplace and sleeping in a sleeping bag in 40 degrees and getting up in the next day in the same clothes, dealing with 90-degree temperatures. So he didn't really think that the temperature was going to be a big deal. And in fact, it was not. And this team has shown the discipline, the organization, and the skill set that people are stepping up to do the job, that I think that this is a very promising season.
Yeah, Tom Herman, the Florida Atlantic coach, said he just did not see that performance coming. He was very disappointed in his team's performance, very complimentary about Army, but he said he just didn't see this kind of game happening. Richard,
real
you were
quick.
at the good.
Real quick, one of the things, we talk a lot about play. We talk a lot about, being prepared and all the rest of the stuff. The mental aspect of the game and just the belief in yourself and the believing in doing things is so strong, especially with players like Army. It takes the belief. If you think about Navy during the COVID game, we're playing in Mikey Stadium, the goal line stand we had there. The Air Force game the week after, and the goal line stand we had there. The Navy game that we just played and won, the goal line stand we had there. These players believe that they're going to see you come within the 5-yard line. They believe they're going to stop you, right? Where some players are going to be like, oh man, they're going to score, and here comes No, they don't believe that. They believe this is our domain. And if you think about it, they've only got 10 yards behind them, so the defensive backs don't have to worry about people getting behind them. Everybody tightens up, and everybody gets hard-nosed, and they're like, you're not going to score. The FAU goal line stand happened 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year. That belief is now a part of our fabric, and it's an attitude. It's an attitude about, you're not coming in here. We're not going to let that happen. Just like the offense is starting to get their attitude about, hey, we're going to put this down your throat and control this ball game. When you start believing like that, you can be a very, very dangerous foe.
Indeed, you can. Indeed, you can. And I think the thing is here that you look also at some of the players. Coach Monken was really, really impressive in the way he was talking about the game today, the other day, because he pointed out, they were upset that Kanye Udo didn't hold the ball on that one for the fumble. And he made a point to make sure that Kanye knew that was not acceptable. But at the same time, while he was disappointed in the 2 calls of the chop blocks, he was much more understanding of that because he had looked at the video and he'd seen how close it was to being a quite legal block both times. And so, the coach is understanding there's give and take to be done on this team. And I think that he's going to let certain players do certain things that they have to do. And other times he's going to hold them accountable for foolish things if they do them.
Yeah.
I think there's a technical element to the blocking rule. Maybe Steve could explain. But Coach Monken, I think he kind of felt like the referees called it very tight on a couple of those plays. Steve, what did you
agree.
Well, number one, I guarantee you that Herman probably sent a push packet to the referees a video of what to expect with Army blocking. It probably had a smattering of stuff from last year or the year before. And so that was going to be a point of emphasis on from the officials for this game or any game for that matter. So anything that's close is going to be looked at is going to be scrutinized. And, you know, Army's worked with the All Blacks of the Australian rules football team, and they learn how to tackle, they learn how to block with leverage, and they actually come out about waist high. So, you know, one person's waist is another person's, you know, below the waist, and they got caught up on that. And it's going to happen. You know, as you lose leverage, as you lean forward, you could start at the waist and then slide down. And if the referee doesn't see it, or if he's blocked and he sees that, there are a number of reasons why that could be an issue. You know, coach is not going to get on somebody who's trying the proper technique, and that is going 1,000 miles an hour. He's going to be understanding that S happens, right? When it comes to, you know, and he made a point in his press conference to talk about Udo's fumble, that if you're going to put one hand on the ball, not two, then you're going to run the risk of sitting on the bench if you should fumble it. And that's true. And coach, I've had many conversations with him about it. He despises turnovers. Despises.
Absolutely.
And one of the reasons why we don't get the ball outside more, and when we looked at our quarterback pitching in the Lehigh game, that silly pitch he made, is that he doesn't want the ball on the turf. And so he would rather run the midline option, keepers, which drives us all crazy, versus getting that ball outside and eliminating the pitch key and getting Noah down the field 40 yards. He would rather methodically do it and not run the risk of putting the ball on the turf. That's how much he hates the turnover. So, yep, that's ingrained in him from day one. The blocks he'll take because, you know, they're going 1,000 miles an hour, and heck, their offensive line was the best offensive line in the country first week. So,
Yeah, I wanted to add just a couple of thoughts about this team so far that are, some of them summed up with statistics and some of them just summed up with my observations. And, you know, one of them is right now, Army has the second longest win streak in the nation in FBS football. Kudos to Army. Second, 160 yards by Noah Short is the most yards by a slot back in the Monken era. So kudos to Noah Short, and the rising confidence in the perimeter game under Cody Worley's play calling has been phenomenal, with the group of talented backs that occupy the backfield of the Army team right now. And finally, this team has the makings of something really special. I'm not going to go out on a limb and predict the rest of the season. We know that is something that you cannot do. But what I personally am seeing on this team so far is the makings of the type of special season that we saw in '96 with the team that you know, went to the Independence Bowl and won the Commander-in-Chief trophy, or the 2018 team with Kelvin Hopkins. They could even be better, but they do have a very hard schedule. But I think something was solidified on offense this past week, and that is the unquestioned leader on that team is Bryson Daly. And my favorite play of the entire game was Bryson Daly pitching the ball to Noah Short and then sprinting 40 yards downfield to level a defender in a block to spring Noah Short for a few more yards. Yeah. I got to say, you got a quarterback like that, I'll follow that quarterback against any team, any day, any hour of the day. And you just say the time and place, man. And I know that team's got to be feeling the same way. So I can't wait to see the team play again.
And I'll point out one other thing that I think was crucial, and I think will be crucial moving forward. To date, no Army player has suffered a severe injury, and that's very significant in terms of their durability for the rest of the season. And I think it speaks well of what the coaching staff has done to prepare them for the season.
Gonna have to start burning sage.
What's that, Steve?
gonna have to start burning some sage there. We can't have any jinxes here on that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see what happens. You know, on defense, have to mention Chance Keith had 7 tackles, and the inside linebackers, Andon Thomas and Caleb Fordner. Thomas had 5, Fordner had 4. It's really, the defense is looking sharp.
And don't forget to point out Max DiDomenico, because in addition to the interception, he was the guy who stopped them on 4th and 1 at the goal line.
Yep, and tackle for loss. So the linebackers seem to be really maturing, and the defensive backfield is holding their own. Steve, what do you think about the defensive backs? How they've been handling the situation? You got some younger players surrounding Max DiDomenico, the senior.
Yeah, they're starting to come. You know, again, it's game 2. They're starting to come into their own. This quarterback really was a 2-dimensional run and pass, but more so, it's more impressive on how we contain him run wise, because he runs the ball to set up the pass. He had some decent throws, but then he had some throws that were a little problematic. I think they're playing fundamentally really well. They're keeping that, you know, we talked, Ben, before break, but we're keeping that ball inside and up front, no big plays. And they're starting to find their legs and kind of, you know, get a feel for it. That interception, if you listen to the quarterback from FAU, DiDomenico really hid. He was keying off of him and watched his hips, and he actually didn't give his hips up early. He thought he was going to go to the other route, and he jumped this route and made the pick, which was, you know, really well disguised. So, you know, kudos for him to not show his hand and do that. I mean, the maturation of the defensive backfield is going to be an ongoing thing, and I'm looking forward. I mean, Rice throws the ball a little bit better. We've got some really good throwing teams coming up. ECU is playing a lot better, and Notre Dame, although they didn't look like they could throw the ball at all against NIU, but you know, we can talk about that later. But they're going to continue. What I love about this is the fact that this team is coming together as a team, and you know, I think the continue the maturation of the defensive backfield is going to be direct correlation with the linebackers, which is going to be direct correlation with the defensive up front. So, you know, we'll continue to play. This could be one of the best of the Munkins teams, not one of the best of having Munkins players, but one of the best teams as a whole playing together. And if you think about the level of coaching that, you know, how good are our coaches? Take a look at Noah. Noah 2 years ago was playing defensive back, linebacker, defensive back, you know, so, and now he's moved to wide receiver, and now he's a slot back that's having a killer year thus far. So recognizing that talent and putting it in the right place to succeed. And then when you think about our center, who was a defensive lineman at the prep school 2 years ago, and now he is probably going to be on the Remington short list next year. And this year he's making some waves already. Yeah. So, you know, finding these people, putting them in the right position to succeed, and then coaching the heck out of them, because it takes a lot to move them from 1 to 2 to 3 positions. And they're doing a great job. And not only are they plugging holes, but they're excelling. And that says a lot about the coaching staff.
You know, Tom Herman, the Florida Atlantic coach today on his conference call, complimented Army that the team is playing mostly juniors and seniors who have come up through the program. And at Florida Atlantic, they've got 50 new players on the roster, and 7 of the 11 starters on offense were transfers or new players. And you know, how Army, you know, really is able to hold on to players and play players that they've developed over 2 to 3 years. And all kind of the new face of college football, with heavy teams playing a lot of new players off the transfer portal. Richard, you were at the game. What did you think?
I just really thought a game that really, I think that Army definitely, you know, they just, you know, won comfortably. I think it was definitely an easy an easy win for them over FAU, the Army FAU football game. If you look at look going over going over the game itself, I just really feel the game, itself. As far
Okay.
as I think, going by, of course, the game stats, Army was definitely really being led. Noah Short, they really ran the ball well. Army definitely really ran the ball well. Definitely being led. But Bryson Daly and Noah Short really carried the pace well. They
Okay.
carried the pace well. They really let the running game do the talking for them against this FAU team, in a game
Okay.
that
Okay.
they should
There you
be
go.
winning, and that they really definitely needed to have.
Okay. Okay. I want to get back to you in a minute, talk about some of the other big games in college football. Steve, look like you had a comment about impact of transfer portal on teams like Florida Atlantic.
Well, you see it a lot in college basketball, right? Everything was the one and done, and that was all in vogue. And now, when you're getting into the tournament, you're seeing the value of having teams, 5 players that played all 4 years with each other, right? That maturation of a team and playing, team together, everybody achieves more happens, right? So when Army players are coming up through the system and they start building the rhythm and knowing where this person's going to be and dying in that foxhole every day with them is super important. And you can't understate that. So teams, I mean, heck, Florida Atlantic, they got to put their dang on nil portal on the field to advertise it to get more money in, right? So they need to win faster, and they need to win now, and they're looking for. And if you look at the disaster, which was the Colorado-Nebraska game, right? Because that is the ultimate program, Colorado, that you're trying to build. They just turn the roster over every year and look for next players. And meanwhile, he's coddling his kids to make millions of dollars. So, it's interesting that you can get talent in and you can get it in quickly, but can they gel? Can they come together? Are they coachable? Are they in the portal because they're not coachable? Are they in the portal for other reasons? Who knows? And then you're bringing a bunch of players who have always been the best player in their school, who've always been coddled, and now you're bringing them together and they're a part of 22 that may not be good together. So it's really interesting that I would rather be the underdog, scrappy group that comes together as a team rather than be a part of a mercenary group that may or may not have the same things aligned.
Yeah. Hey, Chuck, you were following the other games in the American Conference this past weekend. Why don't you run down what the results were?
Absolutely, Ken. Yeah, quite a series of matches across the board there. Alabama took a 42-16 victory over South Florida. Meanwhile, close game between Kansas State, Tulane. Kansas emerging victorious 34-27. East Carolina versus Old Dominion was another close one with 20-14 East Carolina victory. Well, very close. Arkansas State versus Tulsa. Arkansas pulled off a 28-24 victory. Real curb stomp battle between Rice and Texas Southern. Rice pulling off a 69-7 win. Texas State took down UTSA with a final score 49-10. Navy 38 won over Temple with just 11. And meanwhile, the North Texas Stephen F. Austin ended with a 35-20 North Texas victory. In the Troy-Memphis contest was 38-17 win for Memphis, while UL Monroe and UAB finished with a 32-6 UL Monroe victory, 38-20 with North Carolina triumphing over Charlotte.
Well, thanks, Chuck. For that tour of University of Texas San Antonio losing big to Texas State. Texas State, you don't hear too much about, but that was an interesting outcome. Anything stand out to you, Sam, in those scores?
The only thing that stands out to me is what we talked about in our huddle before the Lehigh game, and that is it really is impossible to gauge what a team in the NIL age and transfer portal age. It's really hard to gauge what a team and their record from the previous season is going to translate into for the coming season. So a team like UTSA, they've had a lot of success in the past 3 or 4 seasons, albeit not necessarily against Army. But that doesn't translate into how good a team like UTSA is going to be this season. Likewise, we don't know how much they're going to improve or decline between now and their next game. So it's not that they don't have the athletes, the teams in the conference, they all do. It really is a matter of, like what Steve was saying, is that can you build a mercenary team and have them work coherently together, and come together as a team and deliver the victories that you expect that level of talent to provide? Or do you want to have a team like a service academy team where you are not necessarily getting the 4 and 5 star recruits that are coming on board? However, you are developing them in your own player pipeline for all 4 years, so that by the time they do become the next man up and they're stepping on the field, these are athletes who are much more aligned in superiority to where they were at the time they became a part of the academy. And I've got to say this. I'm not taking a jibe at FAU. I hope no one takes it that way, but it was noticeable everywhere where they had their NIL in Paradise logo on the field, and on the Jumbotron they were doing ads for NIL in Paradise. Up against the Army team, NIL in Paradise amounts to nil on the W column is what it amounts to.
Yeah. There's something to be said for a program that can keep its players and develop them over 4 years, which is maybe an advantage the service academies have.
I think you're right, Ken, because one of the things about the service academies is they preach teamwork, 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 and everybody doing exactly the right thing can overcome one specific superstar player.
And they're always going to be playing for a trophy rather than, a lot of players now in college football are getting a paycheck, essentially. And if you read the New York Times article about SEC players starters are averaging $600,000 a year. It's more than the NFL minimum. Jack McGurk, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Okay, well, let's hear about how Air Force and Navy did this past week.
All right, I'll start off with Navy. They had a nice 38-11 win over Temple at home. Heck of a game for Navy quarterback Blake Horvath. Rushed for 122 yards, had 3 rushing touchdowns on 15 carries, while throwing for 112 yards and a touchdown pass, going 5 of 9 through the air. And a great game for the Navy defense. Temple, in the first quarter, Temple ran 10 first quarter plays and gained just 5 yards, while the Navy defense actually came up with the first score of the game on a safety when junior Justin Reed knocked Temple quarterback Forrest Brock out of the back of the end zone for a safety after Brock fumbled a shotgun snap. Navy's first touchdown of the game was a 2-yard carry by Blake Horvath at the end of the first quarter. Jackson Campbell came up with an interception for Navy on the next Temple possession, and shortly after that, Horvath ran 62 yards for another touchdown. Later in the second quarter, Alex Texa had a 65-yard touchdown run. Navy had a 23-3 lead at halftime. Early in the third quarter, Horvath threw a 31-yard touchdown pass to Eli Heidenreich. With 2:58 left in the game, Horvath came up with an 18-yard touchdown run. On defense, Navy held Temple to just 35 yards rushing on 20 carries. Senior linebacker Colin Ramos for Navy, 15 tackles in the game. Navy 2-0 for the first time since 2019. They have a bye week before hosting AAC rival Memphis. Air Force, on the other hand, it was a rough day for Air Force. 17-7 loss to San Jose State. By the way, San Jose State head coach, no stranger to Air Force football, and that's the former longtime Navy head coach, Ken Niumatalolo. Air Force had 197 yards total offense, just 143 rushing. 7 rushers accumulated yards on the ground for Air Force. Junior receiver Cade Harris led the Air Force rushers with 50 yards on 8 attempts. And Cade Harris had the only score of the game for Air Force on a 6-yard touchdown run late in the first quarter. 10 Air Force defenders had 4 tackles in the game. But this is a tough one for the Air Force offense, and 17-7 lost San Jose State. And if you watch the game at the end of it, Ken Diamantolo was smiling ear to ear. I think he loves beating Air Force.
I'm sure he does. Where was that game played, Jack?
That was at Colorado Springs.
In Colorado Springs. Okay, a road win for Ken Diamantolo.
And Air Force is going to be taking on Baylor this weekend.
Okay, and Navy's got a bye week. Okay.
Yep.
Let's move up to Richard. Richard, what were some of the top 10 games? And then we're gonna have to get to Notre Dame, their debacle.
Some of the top 10 games in college football this week, as we go through the top 25 games. They will, let's see. Come on, week 2. Okay, week 2. Number 1, Georgia over Tennessee Tech 48-3. Number 2, Ohio State 56-0 over Western Michigan. Number 4, Alabama 42-16 over the South Florida. Number 3, Texas 31-12 over number 10 Michigan. And NIU defeated Notre Dame 16-4. That's number 5, 16-14. Number 5, Notre Dame in a huge upset. Number 6, Ole Miss 52-3 over Middle Tennessee. Number 7, Oregon 37-34 over Boise State. Number 8, Penn State 34-27 over Bowling Green. Also, you have number 15, Oklahoma 16-12 over Houston. Number 23, Georgia Tech losing 31-28 to Syracuse. You have number 22, Louisville 49-14 over Jacksonville State. Number 18, LSU 44-21 over Nicholas. And in double overtime, number 16, Oklahoma State over Arkansas 39-31.
Very good, Richard. Steve, what did you think of Notre Dame losing at home to Northern Illinois?
I was watching the game actually, and again, you talk about belief and attitude. The longer you keep a team in a game like that, they become believing that this is not going to be just a fluke, that this is actually can happen. And belief is so important. That running back for NIU was running inspired. The coach was inspirational also, and the transfer portal quarterback from Duke last year couldn't hit a barn door. So these are going to happen. They're going to happen more and more often. It's amazing. I like to see it. I like seeing it. I like parity in college football. It just means that Notre Dame's going to be locked in for the rest of the year. And I'd rather have them won that game and let their guard down against us. But we'll see where it goes. But again, any given Saturday, you provide belief and things can happen. They can happen. You think about App State against Michigan. Think about these games that happen all the time. Just believe in yourself.
Yeah, I kind of believe that the outcome of that Notre Dame Northern Illinois game earlier in the day was reminded upon the Alabama team, because even though the final score of the Alabama South Florida game was 42-13, the score was 14-13 early in the fourth quarter, and Alabama had just turned the ball over. So that building belief, it was really, you could have seen the look on the fans if anyone was watching the game, that the Alabama fans were literally looking like, what is going on here? We're about to get Northern Illinois in our own stadium. And then suddenly Alabama figured out that they were Alabama and started playing like Alabama again and rolled them for the rest of the fourth quarter. But man, it was a lot closer than that final score was.
Well, didn't this team play Alabama hard last year in the sideways rain?
I think they did, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, again, belief, right? They didn't fear the mystique anymore. Saban's gone. We played them hard last year.
Yeah.
Belief.
Mm-hmm. And I think as far as the Notre Dame game is concerned, I believe I saw this. I could be wrong. I think that is the first time a MAC team has ever beaten Notre Dame.
Wow. And then you look at a team like Northern Illinois, it'd be interesting to check their roster, how many transfers they had, joining the team, or were they able to hold on to their players and not lose their better players to Power 4 schools? Because there lies a big advantage if you can hold on to your players and, kind of as a group of 5 program. So Army comes up off a really impressive win. I'll be able to practice tomorrow. So a couple of young players on defense I want to talk to. Chance Keith, who had a big role leading the team in tackles, and Gavin Shields, who had a big game for tackles, and Colin Madison had a couple of younger players who made an impression and are gaining playing time for Army.
So Ken,
Steve.
a rather astute comment from you. Northern Illinois has 1 transfer as a starter on offense and 1 transfer as a starter on defense. And that is it.
Nice.
And they are extremely senior heavy. In
They're
terms
hung
of
on to their players.
Yeah, so they're hung on to their players and they've nurtured them through the system. And heck, if that coach coaches half the way that he looked like on TV, they love being around him. Because if you've ever been in Northern Illinois, they're not playing for the facilities. Because that place is a glorified high school stadium. I've been there.
Army was out there a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago. Yeah, well, that's key is the coach. Do the players want to play for that coach? Want to stay with that coach for the ongoing rest of their careers? And then what the money element is. As I was saying, the New York Times wrote an article this week about what the NIL estimates are for players, and they said the SEC players are leading with the highest average of approximately $600,000 a starter, and the Big Ten being around just over $200,000 per player. And question is, if players want to go, be professional football players in college, or they're on education and enjoy the team that they are on when they start out. As I was saying, Tom Herman gave Coach Monken and Army quite a compliment about being able to play experienced players, mostly juniors and seniors, who have developed through the program. Well, I think we'll break a little bit early tonight, and we'll get set. As I said, I'll be able to practice tomorrow. Looking forward to that Wednesday. And then next Saturday, a week from Saturday, Army will host the Rice Owls. They're going to play Owls 3 weeks in a row. It's kind of an anomaly there. But Rice coming off a strong win. And who do they play this week? Do we have Chuck? Do you have who Rice is going to play this week?
Yeah, let me check that out, Ken. I would be to know, I'm sure. I wonder if it'll be another curb stomp battle like they pulled off the weekend. That was one for the ages, I would say.
Got it?
Houston.
Okay, so that's a tough game for Rice. Crosstown, a rivalry game for them.
All right.
So Richard, final thought. What are the big games you're going to watch this weekend?
The big games I'm going to be watching this weekend will be, let's see, as we go to the college football schedule this week, week number 3. I am going to be watching. Let's see, a game that I'm going to be watching. Well, I'm going to be watching number 18 Notre Dame taking on Purdue, and I'm also going to be watching LSU taking on South Carolina high noon on Saturday. Okay. And then also, of course, for the night game, I'm going to be watching number 1 Georgia taking on the Kentucky Wildcats. And then also at the end of the night, I will be watching San Diego State taking on California at 10:30. So I'm going to be watching a lot of big games Saturday.
One of the game I thought was extraordinary was Texas going into Michigan and winning.
Mhm.
Why Michigan scheduled that game, I'll never know. I mean, they were going to sell out 107,000 seats anyway. I mean, they make a little bit of incremental television money. But to lose a game like that when the schedule you got coming up now in the Big Ten with the addition of the 4 teams from the Pac-10.
Yeah.
Steve,
I
if you were the AD at Michigan, would you schedule that game?
When they scheduled the Texas wasn't good.
Yeah.
That long ago?
I
When
mean,
they
it was,
scheduled it, it was the Texas was probably under Herman.
yeah, it was a few years ago when they scheduled it.
So
Well,
that was the marquee game of the weekend, right? You want to be marquee if you're going to perform. You want to have that marquee game for that weekend, and that was the marquee game.
okay, so they got an extra paycheck from television for that.
I mean, I don't think it's the page. You've got to be. Think about back then when they put that on the schedule. You were still a 14 playoff, right? They couldn't beat Ohio State, and you were going to get 2 SEC teams in there all the time. So they had to figure out a way to be relevant. So them playing Northern Arizona is not the answer for that.
But true,
but now we're a 12 team playoff, and the marketplace has changed significantly.
But now you're in a conference with USC, Oregon, and Washington, and UCLA's probably not so bad either. So you've all of a sudden got added at least 2 really tough games to your schedule. Against perennial top 10, top 15. So anyway,
if I'm Michigan, I'm not fearing USC.
Okay.
At the time, they're getting better, but I'm not. Michigan and USC are not in the same. Washington and Michigan are not in the same league.
Okay.
Anybody watch the Air Force or the Navy games this past weekend?
I watched both.
Yeah. I watched as much of them as I could.
Maybe I'll do a 2-0 start.
I don't know if Navy is getting that much better, or if just Temple's that much of a dumpster fire.
Yeah. My read on Air Force and Navy are that, hey, no matter where they are right now, I don't think enough of the season has been played, especially where Navy is concerned, to try to start doing the balance sheet between Army and Navy to say, hey, we're better than they are. You're going to have stats that are going to show that, hey, we're better than they are in a lot of very key categories. And then you're going to find stats with Navy that say, hey, their defense is all over the field, forcing turnovers like crazy. The bottom line is, and then Air Force, hey, look, Air Force is probably going to get crushed by Baylor. And I don't say that to be mean on Air Force, or maybe I am saying that, but the fact of the matter is, though, that the Air Force team itself, Troy Calhoun, as much as we like to diss on Air Force, he's a good coach. And the Air Force team, if they don't have a winning formula figured out in the next few seasons, he's going to do some serious roster moves. And so we may actually be playing different starters come by the time we play them, but he's going to figure out whatever formula is going to do the best for the Air Force season this year. He hasn't arrived at it yet, but you can expect that Air Force is going to bring a game to Mikey Stadium. So not time to be thinking that Air Force is going to get blown out or anything like that. Navy, hey, we'll see where we stand at the end of the season, and what's most important when we sing second after playing Navy this year.
Yeah, I hold judgment on Air Force and Navy until October 5th.
When they play,
that's when they play each other. Right?
They play each other, and you can really get a good tone on who's going to be who at that point. And that's when we knew last year Air Force was really legitimate, and we really laser focused for our November game, and we came out and kicked their butts.
Yeah.
And we'll have a really good idea of where everybody stands at that point. It's not going to mean much for us, other than who's a pretender, who's a contender at that point. So that's going to be
Yeah.
interesting on that.
I think Troy Calhoun will have whatever roster moves he's going to make between now and then. He'll have them set. So he will have made adjustments that will be. He'll bring as good of an Air Force team into the game against Navy as he possibly can.
Very well. Okay, well, let's call it a night. I want to thank everybody for watching and thank our team, Colonel Sam Houston out of Beat Navy Studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you, Colonel.
Yeah, great game again. I'm glad everyone who went survived the heat. We made a real long weekend out of it. We managed to hit the beach over at Boca Raton, and we did an airboat ride on the Everglades, courtesy of Swamp Monster Tours. Highly recommended. It was awesome. Plus, we had a couple of fabulous steak meals on 2 consecutive nights. I can't say enough about the long weekend. It was great.
Okay, and game was the highlight. Richard Miller, thank you. Thanks for your help. Good
My pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
Okay. And John Sharan, thank you for your insight and for your game story this week.
Glad to help out, Ken.
Okay. Steve Shalou from South Jersey, thank you for your analysis. Good to see you.
Good to be seen. I wasn't invited to either of those steak dinners.
Seems like I didn't see you until after the tailgate was over. I didn't see you again the rest of the weekend.
Yeah. Okay. And Jack McGurk, thank you. Thank you for your insight on keeping track of the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy.
Of course, happy to be here.
And Chuck Donegan, glad to have you join us and help us keep track of this new conference that Army is in, the American Athletic Conference.
Thanks, Ken. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And I'm going to say goodnight. Thank everyone for watching. Again, this is Army Football Huddle. It is a program of CammVetsMedia, LLC. We cover cadets, midship in the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. Thanks for watching, everybody.